I am so aware that downtime fuels uptime. So it is actually very, very productive to rest, because that means when I do need to be focusing my energy for my family and for my work, I have got that energy in reserve. Hello and welcome to Habit Nerd, a podcast show that knows that few things can have a more powerful impact on your life than improving your daily systems, habits, and mindset. I'm your host, Dr. Bree Hurn, a multi-passionate researcher, lecturer, speaker, and coach. Once a perfectionist who was always busy but not necessarily effective, I overcame illness and burnout and am now obsessed with sharing the science and systems for working with efficiency and habits for abundant health in your mind and your body. Each week, my guests and I share stories and lessons backed by research. So let's buckle up and dive straight into today's empowering conversation. Hello there, and a giant welcome and thank you for spending time with me on today's episode of Habit Nerd. Now, we are discovering today the importance of setting up a calendar, so setting up your weekly or your monthly calendar so that you can be your most efficient, your most productive, and your most dynamic self. A lot of our tips today come from Laura Mae Martin, who is Google's executive productivity advisor. And lots of these tips come from her recent book, which is titled Uptime. It's important to know your flow when it comes to your work habits and your life habits. This is in terms of knowing where your energy and your focus and your cognitive strength is firing and where it is not so much. I have a productivity audit that's available for free for you over on my Instagram at Habit Nerd. This productivity audit is a really simple tool to give you real-time insights into where your productivity is high and where your productivity is not so high across a week. So it's about just paying attention, putting in green in some boxes and red in others so that you can get a real-time reflection on yourself and your habits. Now, managing your time is about more than just scheduling events on a calendar, because remember, not all time slots across your week are equal. So it's really important to consider the rhythm of your day and when and where you have the most energy and can do your best work. Is it easier for you to concentrate early in the morning, or do you feel your concentration is stronger in the early afternoon or the late afternoon? Are you a night owl? Are you more productive in the office or when you're working from home? Do you prefer to be out and about in a coffee shop or in a library, for example? Therefore, are you slotting the right work in at the right time? It's really fundamental that we make sure we're focusing on our highest impact tasks during the time that we feel most energized, and that we leave tasks like catching up on industry news or coffee chats with co-workers to where your energy slot is lower. So I'm going to give you a step-by-step process into how to design your calendar based on your flow and based on your highest priorities so that you can get the most out of your work week. Step 1 is to do some deep thinking. I would suggest getting a cup of tea or a cup of coffee and a blank sheet of paper, or maybe going for a walk and making some voice notes to yourself. You are going to think really carefully about your top 3 work priorities for this quarter. It might be even just for the month or even a fortnight, depending on the type of job that you have. But when I'm talking about the top 3 work priorities, what I mean is, what are the priorities that will move the needle the most for you as a professional? So for me, at my main job, it is teaching a master's subject and doing that extremely well. So that for me looks like planning the content for the subject, researching, making sure I'm up to date with the most contemporary readings, recording lectures for my students, planning the tutorials, coming up with excellent resources for the subject, meeting with my teaching team. So all of those activities will go into that priority that I have of teaching that subject that I am going to be teaching in the first semester at university for this year extremely well. The second priority I have is collaborating on the writing, so the designing and the writing of a new professional learning offering. So I'm going to be working with 2 other colleagues, and we are designing a new custom education offering to deliver to hundreds and hundreds of people. So therefore, that task can be broken into many, many different pieces in terms of research and production and who's doing what. So that is going to be my number 2 most high priority work task for the coming month or coming quarter. And the last one, I am going to be writing a journal article for a particular journal, and that article at the moment is only about 1/4 done. So I know when I look at my calendar, I need to have evidence of time blocked out for those top 3 priorities. I wonder, when you do that deep introspection, what your top 3 priorities will be. Then think about the big rocks that matter. So you might remember that analogy of the university professor who goes into his class and he puts in the big rocks into a big jar. And he says, these are the things that matter. These are your family relationships. These are your friendships. These are your health. And then he pours in tiny rocks and he says, these are things like your work. And then he pours in sand and he says, these are things that matter the least. And his analogy is that if we fill up with the things that matter the least, our jar can get filled with sand and pebbles, and the things that really matter, the big rocks, won't fit. So it's important to put the big rocks in first. So as part of this deep reflection, think carefully about the big rocks in your life. So for me, if I'm looking towards a calendar week, the big rocks are doing 2 school drop-offs for my girls and 2 school pickups across the week. A big rock is taking my girls to their netball training. And another big rock for me is my health, my physical health. So it is getting to a 6 a.m. gym class on 3 weekdays. So those big rocks are must-haves for me in my calendar. So that's step 1, doing that deep thinking, that deep introspection. So there were 2 parts to that. The first one was coming up with your top 3 work priorities. And the second one is thinking about the big rocks in your life and where they need to be scheduled in for the coming week or fortnight or month, however far ahead you are going to design your calendar. Now, this is the fun part. Step 2, get a blank calendar. So use whichever calendar software you are comfortable with and what your organization already uses if you work for somebody else. Don't reinvent the wheel. You might use Outlook or Google, for example. Hi everyone, I do hope you're enjoying The Habit Nerd. Now, whilst I love sharing research-informed, tried and tested habits for work, health and mindset on this podcast, you might not know that I am also a keynote speaker and I facilitate workshops. Now, I have opened up a limited amount of dates just in the first half of 2025 so that your organisation or event can engage me, the Habit Nerd. We can work together to refine the message just for your context, but I can use the principles of behavioural science and organisational psychology to create and sustain positive habits and cover things like task prioritisation, calendar management, hybrid work practices, managing email, and productivity habits, just to name a few. I can also help you with which habits have the most comprehensive impact across your life, work and learning habits, habits to create and maintain physical health, and mental health habits to thrive in a busy life. So if a warm, engaging presentation or workshop dripping in practical strategies and propped up by credible research sounds like something you or your organisation could really do with, then go to The Habit Nerd on Instagram. Let's work together to create some really great habits. Now, this step is called zero-based calendaring, and Laura Mae Martin has come up with this term because it's based on zero-based budgeting, which is a finance term, and it's an approach to budgeting that's been adopted by many businesses across the world. It's basically a method that completely disregards any previous budget numbers and starts from a zero base. So therefore, a company who is employing zero-based budgeting knows that every function within their organization is analyzed for its needs and costs. You might feel a connection to zero-based wardrobe. So think about it. If your wardrobe was completely blank, you didn't have anything in it, what would you go to the shops and buy? Now, it's important to understand that research shows that we feel more connection to what is already in our calendar than putting in something new. So therefore, if you're to think about your calendar and what's been already put in there by other people, maybe standing meetings, you feel more connection to that than if you were to put something new in. That's why it's really important to start with a blank calendar. So if your calendar is blank, so it's zero-based, what would you put in regarding your top 3 work priorities? What would you put in regarding your big rocks that matter? Step 3 in terms of your blank calendar is to consider meetings. Now, many people consider their week, their calendar, like a jigsaw puzzle. And it's a matter of just, oh, there's a blank 30-minute slot, I'll put a meeting in there. Instead of slotting new meetings in wherever you find a space in the calendar, think about grouping meetings by type, by content, and by location. So as an example, you might meet with all of your direct reports on a Wednesday afternoon when you're in the office. Make sure you set your working location and the hours in your calendar, so whether you're working from home or whether you're working in the office, and RSVP to meetings with your location. That way, everyone knows what to expect. There are calendar tools in Google and in Outlook and in other applications to help you make your meetings run smoothly. Make sure you're using a world clock to schedule across time zones, and that ensures you're respecting global colleagues' time. Change your default meeting length to 15 minutes to make sure that you're only scheduling for the minimum time needed for discussions. Parkinson's law says that a task will inflate to fill the time that we give to it. So if you set a 1-hour meeting, even though a discussion that you need to have might take 10 minutes, it will take 1 hour because that's what you've allocated. So consider setting your default time on your calendar software to 15 minutes. And if you need to add 2 blocks of 15 minutes, you can do that. But it's taking away this idea that all time blocks and all discussions are created equal when we know that they're not. Now, step 4, this is where you're actually going to put some things into your calendar. So remember, all of the first 3 steps are simply about planning for what we're going to do in the calendar. So it's about doing the deep thinking. It's about getting a blank calendar and thinking about a zero-based approach. And it is thinking about your meetings. Now it's time to get creative with colors. Think about the blank calendar, the zero-based calendar in front of you. Put, first of all, the things in that are non-movables. These are things that are out of your control. So these might be established team meetings, for example. So these are not your choice. They are there whether you like it or not. So put those in. Put the big rocks that matter in. So put in, if you have got an elderly parent who once a fortnight you need to take to an appointment, make sure that's in there. Put in the school pickup time if that's something you do a couple of days a week. Remember to always overestimate how long something is going to take. So if you think that you have a 50-minute commute to work, give it an hour, because if it takes 1 hour and you've only allotted 50 minutes, you'll be disappointed and you'll already start work for the day behind the 8 ball. So be realistic and give yourself a 10-minute margin for things like commuting to work. Now, using your knowledge of your flow, schedule your power hours. Power hours are deep, interrupted work time for your top 3 priorities. So your top priority might be yellow. Color code any task that is associated with your number 1 priority in yellow. Your Next top priority might be green. So any task that you need to do to match with that second priority, put that in green. And your third one, for example, could be yellow. So put that in yellow. This way you can look back and decide whether each of your top 3 priorities are getting a fair amount of time. And it's also ensuring that your power hours are being used for the things that will have the most impact in your work, that will move the needle in your work. Remember, if you have enough autonomy and agency to plan your time, make sure you do it to suit you and your work goals, because somebody else, as we know, will come, swoop in and put a meeting in your power hours. And that is just not a smart use of your time or your energy. It's recommended by Laura Mae Martin to leave an urgent matters hour and leave this blank. So in my calendar, this is red. And the reason it's red is because the matters must be urgent and unplanned. So they're not on my to-do list. They're not something that I was expecting to happen that day, but it is allowing for those mini crises that come up on any given workday. But I want to give you a fair pre-warning. Urgent means important. So just because it's urgent to somebody else doesn't mean it's urgent or important to you in the grand scheme of your work. So keep strong boundaries. But leaving an urgent matters hour does take the pressure off from when you think that you have scheduled yourself back to back and then something unplanned comes up and you feel resentful, and then you can start to feel a little bit out of control. So the urgent matters hour allows, if something comes up at 10 o'clock and your urgent matters hour is from 1 till 2, you know that you can see that email and think, no, I have time to attend to that between 1 and 2, back to the task that I was working on. Now, when you're planning your week, consider what the research tells us. Fridays, for example, are motivating because we know we need tasks done before the weekend. So you can use that natural motivation, if that's true for you, to schedule some tasks in because you know that you will get those done. Thursdays, this was a surprise to me, Thursdays typically are a low energy day for most professionals. So therefore, that might be a day where you can catch up for meetings with colleagues, you can clear your email inbox, you can do lighter administrative tasks that aren't requiring too much deep thinking and cognitive energy from you, because you might be on a downswing on a Thursday. Now, this is really important. Switching mental gears is costly. So have a half day or even a full day theme for your home and for your work. As an example, I might have a research and a writing day. So I might spend all day Monday only doing research and only doing writing. There might be a half day in my week when I'm recording podcasts and social media content. And that might be on a Wednesday from 12 till 4, for example. Then there might be another day where I am in at work and I need to be with my colleagues for meetings. So I will try and schedule those meetings for that one day where we are together and where we can have our brainstorming meetings and our meetings where we are moving group projects forward. So think about, when you're looking at your calendar and your power hours and your top priorities, where you can do work that is like other work, because switching gears mentally costs you time and it costs you energy. Now, if these tips that I've given you today are new to you, then I would suggest transitioning gradually. So you don't have to do it all at once. You might simply use the productivity audit, use your introspection about your top 3 priorities, and block your time for high and low energy tasks. Even do this for a couple of weeks and monitor how you're going with that. Now, it suits some people, and this is certainly true for me, to schedule also my weekends and my evening downtime, because I have got a family and there are netball games to put in, there are football games to put in, There are times when I do my grocery shopping and my meal prepping. I like to have those scheduled in because then where there is blank, that's my downtime, and I don't have to feel any sense of guilt about that downtime. If I want to put on Netflix, if I want to read my book, then I know that it's not taking time away from anything else because everything else is already scheduled in my calendar. And also, I am so aware that downtime fuels uptime. So it is actually very, very productive to rest, because that means when I do need to be focusing my energy for my family and for my work, I have got that energy in reserve. So I hope you as my audience enjoy this sense of empowerment that comes from investing your time in the things that matter to you, to your work, to your health and your family, where things best belong for your life and for your flow. I'm looking forward to hearing how you go with zero-based calendaring. Let me know over on Instagram at The Habit Nerd, and I look forward to connecting with you next time. Thank you for tuning into this episode of The Habit Nerd. I hope you found some new inspiration, learned something new, or gained a fresh perspective. If you did enjoy the episode, I would be really grateful if you could please leave a 5-star review, as it helps the show get in the ears of new listeners, plus it should only take you 5 seconds. If you're keen for more tips and insights, then head over to Instagram and follow Habit Nerd.